What's up YouTube, Capital G here, checking out some brand new Cyberse themed spells and trap cards that just got revealed and Master Link. A lot of new Signet support, which is obviously good because I talked about a monster yesterday and microcoder that was not only excellent, but I just realized the card's an ultra rare, so that's how you know Konami wants it to be one of the better cards in this structure deck. That card allows you to search any of these Signet spells and traps when it goes to the graveyard, even if it's used from the hand as link material, which is, you know, pretty much a new ability that they're giving. And man, Konami at this point, they are just basically begging us to play the Code Talker monsters and Cyberse. This is the third structure deck for Cyberse, man. I'm not gonna lie, I am a little perturbed because it would have been like during the GX era if we would have gotten 3 elemental heroes or like 3 hero structure decks. Maybe we got like an E hero structure deck, then an evil hero one, and like a destiny hero in between. That would have been a little annoying. Like a duelist pack is enough. I kind of feel like at this point, instead of just making this like generic Cyberse support, maybe Konami should just make Cyberse themed archetypes and they can just make them a lot more powerful and people will just play those instead. But anyways, let's go ahead and break these cards down. I think that off the top, 2 of the 3 cards are actually quite good. I think the other one, way too situational for my taste. So let's go ahead and start with Signet Optimize. This is a continuous spell card with the first effect being a hard once per turn. During your main phase, you cannot special summon monsters from your extra deck for the rest of this turn except Cyberse monsters. Also, immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon 1 Cyberse monster. Effect number 2: if a Code Talker monster you control's battles, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step. So that's pretty good. I think that turning all your code link monsters into, or your Code Talker link monsters, excuse me, things like D Code Talker, Power Code Talker, X Code Talker, we're getting Shooting Code Talker in this very structure deck, but turning them all into Utopia the Lightning, at least locking your opponent out of annoying effects, things like, I don't know, something like Eater of Millions, Trickstar Caribbean when we get that to the TCG, like obviously that's pretty good. Same thing applies if you're attacking into like a Sky Striker link monster. It makes it so your opponent can't get that Ray, which is obviously like invaluable against that deck. But I think the first and the second effect combo pretty nicely because if you're getting an extra normal summon, chances are you're going to be going into one of those Code Talker link monsters. So I think it just kind of makes sense, and being able to gain another normal summon is pretty much invaluable like throughout Yu-Gi-Oh history. I mean, look at this format, man. People have been playing Brilliant Fusion for Seraphonite forever. We also have the Nightmare Goblin. Like getting that extra normal summon is always pretty good. The next card is another continuous spell with the first effect being a hard once per turn. It's Signet Codec, and it says if a Code Talker monster is special summoned to your side of the field from the extra deck, you can target that monster. Add 1 Cyberse monster with the same attribute from your deck to your hand. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except Cyberse monsters for the rest of the turn. So that's almost like that is identical to Optimizer, the last card we just discussed. It says you cannot add another monster of the same attribute from your deck to your hand with the effect of Signet Codec this turn. Okay, so yeah, this kind of explains why like the Code Talker monsters, the links, you know, they have like completely different attributes. They're all over the place. You know, X Code Talker I think is wind, D Code Talker is dark attributes. We've got the Shooting Code Talker coming out of Master Link, this structure deck that is actually water attribute. To me, I don't really like this card. I mean, first off, the monsters, like the link monsters, have to be summoned from the extra deck, so if you summon them back from the graveyard, you don't get to search anything. Second, you're restricted on what you can search because you have to search a monster of the same exact attribute. It just seems way too situational to me, and honestly, like a lot of the Code Talker monsters aren't all that impressive. I mean, you'll probably run like 1 copy of each. I don't even know, man. X Code Talker is just so bad of a card. I don't even know if you're gonna run that card. So I look at this and I'm like, even though this card is searchable, I think I'd honestly pass on it because you have to get an immediate search for this to even kind of pay for itself. Last card is actually a counter trap, which was kind of surprising to me. It's called Signet Conflict. Counter trap that is a hard once per turn. I think that that's unfortunate, the fact that they're giving a counter trap that's a hard once per turn, because generally when you think of like defensive cards, you think of kind of walling up against your opponent. You think of the old days of like Infernity, having 3 barriers down there and a break and your opponent can't do anything. But if barrier was a hard once per turn, you'd be like, fuck, as soon as they negate the first card, I can can pretty much do whatever I want as the other copies are dead. So I don't believe that counter trap should ever be hard once per turns. I think that that is kind of a step in the wrong direction for Konami, but whatever. Let's go ahead and continue looking at the card. It says when a monster effect or spell / trap is activated while you control a code talker monster, negate that activation, and if you do, banish it. And if you do that until the end of your opponent, or excuse me, until the end of the next turn, your opponent cannot activate a card or effect with the same original name as the banished card by this effect. Okay, I don't love that this card is a hard once per turn. That's really my only beef with it, just because, as I said before, I feel like counter traps are best when you can kind of have multiple of them and you can just like have them just counter all of your opponent's best and most vital plays, and this card has the ability to do that. You can use this just as you would Infernity Barrier or Zephyr Divine Strike, something like Satellar Nova Alpha. This card is good, and I don't even mind the fact that I have to have a code talker monster on the field. A lot of those other cards that I just named, like, they require, you know, an Infernity monster to be in attack mode. They require a Tellarknight monster to be sent to the graveyard. You know what I mean? Like, the activation conditions of this card are obviously fine, and it does kind of, you know, it does have added effects that those cards don't have. The fact that it does actually banish the card is fantastic, because it means if your opponent uses something like Fairy Tale Snow, all right, well, it's permanently banished. You ain't got to worry about that. It also means if your opponent uses something like a Pot of Desires and you negate the activation, your opponent can't just activate another copy of Pot of Desires, or they can't activate, you know, another commonly played card. This is pretty important if you're playing against like a Pendulum deck, because your opponent might be playing a Pendulum scale that has like 3, and they might have to use that other scale, but they won't actually be able to just activate that card. It's really interesting. And the thing is, I believe in a Pendulum they wouldn't be able to activate the card as a scale or activate that monster effect if it was something like, I don't know, Perform a Power Pendulum Sorcerer that you negated when your opponent activated as a scale. Your opponent can Pendulum summon it, they can't activate the effect. So against a deck like Magic Specters, that could be super important. And honestly, this card is excellent. The only real drawback really is the fact that it's a hard once per turn, but it's a really good card, and it actually makes me think, I feel like Konami is going to start making more Link monsters, or just more Cyberse monsters in general, that names on the field become code talker, or some type of code talker, or something like that, because I do get that they're trying to get us to summon, you know, the code talker Link monsters, but it wouldn't be surprising if they release like 3 or 4 effect monsters that when they're on the field, they become, you know, code talker monsters or something like that. Anyways, the fact that this card is searchable makes it really good. I would definitely run it because it kind of stops anything your opponent does, and I think it's really good. Whatever you guys think of these cards, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already. Turn on that notification bell for daily videos.